Kia ora, and welcome to our final talk of the Connect and Develop series for 2025. I'm Peter Papagiannis, Alumni Relations Manager here at the University of Auckland. It's great to have you all here today as we talk about how to show up, engage fully, and respond with confidence when it matters most. Our speaker is Ollie Farnsworth, an experienced business leader who started making great business decisions at an early age when he chose to do his BCom right here at UOA. Joining Ollie today is our MC, Chandni Sarawat. Chand is the founder of Goal Getters Life Coaching, Business Consulting, and Project Management. She is also the co-founder and director of operations at the award-winning hospitality businesses Cassia at Home, and Sid at the French Cafe. And in addition to all this impressive work, she also sits on the board of Heart of the City, Auckland. So as a seasoned entrepreneur, leader, and mentor with expertise in leadership development, strategic planning, operations management, and crisis navigation, it was a natural next step for her to start her coaching practice earlier this year. Through Goal Getters, Chan guides individuals and organizations through transformation and growth with an approach built on real-world experience, strategic thinking, and a deep understanding of what it takes to thrive in both business and life. Chand holds a Bachelor of Arts with a double major in English and psychology, as well as a graduate diploma in teaching from the University of Auckland. Originally from India, Chand is an outspoken advocate for better inclusion of migrants in the New Zealand labor force and has been recognized by the university as a 40 under 40 humanitarian. So on behalf of all of us here at the university, I'd like to say many thanks to Ollie and Chand for being a part of this series, and to everyone joining us, whether this is your first time or you have been here for the entire series. We truly appreciate your support and participation. Over to you, Chand.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that beautiful introduction. Before we get started, everyone, first of all, welcome to this lovely webinar. And I would just like to cover a couple of housekeeping points. The Q&A function is at the bottom of your screen, and it's live. So please submit all your questions through there. Also, if you see an interesting question or one that you wanted to ask, please upvote it so that it bumps up on the queue, and Ollie and I will be taking questions at the end of this webinar. And also, now I'd like to get on with introducing today's speaker, Ollie. As Chief Financial Officer at Tourism Holdings Limited, Ollie Farnsworth leads a broad portfolio encompassing finance, digital, people, transformation, and ESG. A seasoned business leader with deep experience across strategy and operations, Ollie has held roles spanning consulting, creative services, startups, and corporate leadership. His global career has taken him from Auckland to Beijing, Shanghai, Chicago, Atlanta, and New York, shaping a diverse and dynamic perspective that informs his leadership today. Ollie was named New Zealand Young Executive of the Year at the 2021 Deloitte Top 200 Awards in recognition of his innovative approach to cost-cutting and revenue generation for THL during the COVID pandemic. Outside the boardroom, Ollie has a surprising creative outlet, improvisational theatre. He credits his involvement in improv with sharpening his ability to navigate high-stake environments, build trust, and embrace the unknown, one unscripted moment at a time. So let's get into it, Ollie. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and for the very kind introduction, Shand. You're an amazing person yourself, and I've always enjoyed what you and your husband have achieved. So this has been a really cool chance for me to connect in that respect. Look, I look forward to racing through my monologue and getting into your questions. I'm going to talk today about a mindset, really, a mindset I carry of being present and making my career and my life an enjoyable ride. And I'm 20 years into it. And when I look back, I realize that there's really been no grand design to anything I've achieved. Instead, everything is as a result of something that happened before it. Kind of like a butterfly effect, where an event, no matter how big or how small, triggers everything else that happens afterwards. And when I look back, some of the best things that have happened are as a direct result of some of the hardest things that have happened. And some of the biggest turning points in my career have been as a result of speaking up at the right time. And I've really got a strong belief that if you put yourself in interesting places with interesting people and doing interesting work, then the rest kind of looks after itself. So what I'll take you through really is that belief that it's down to the journey being more important than the destination. And for me personally, my superpower has been no particular talent or no particular skill, but more a mindset of approaching every day with curiosity, with optimism, and with ambition, and just having that faith that good things will follow. So I thought today I would take you through a bit of a whirlwind tour of those last 20 years, go back to some of those butterfly effect moments that have been turning points for me, and then talk a little bit around what I do today as a busy dad of three to keep fresh. So, moving into my career journey first and foremost. So, a big shout out to the University of Auckland. It was a very good move to go there. I did a Bachelor of Commerce, had an awesome time, and they were really busy years. So, as well as doing my degree, I was part of the Spark Entrepreneurship Program, which I understand is still going really strong. And then ended up working full time as a business development manager for Student Card as well. And it was that combination of experience, keeping really busy through university, that I credit with getting myself a graduate position as an analyst with Deloitte Consulting. Now, Deloitte Consulting for me, I had 4 really great years, most of it traveling the world. So I was lucky enough to do a whole bunch of work with Rank Group, which is New Zealand's largest private equity outfit, across New Zealand and into the US as well. And basically through that time turned from being a marketer, as I'd been at Student Card, to a data analyst. My last project with Deloitte was in Chicago, and I returned to New Zealand with itchy feet to get abroad again. So met up with a few friends and had the brilliant idea to go and start a business in China. We were going to distribute high-end New Zealand food and beverage. We got in a car and road tripped around New Zealand and got the distribution rights to a whole bunch of great brands, packed our bags, and moved to Beijing with no language, no cultural understanding, and just a general kind of naivety of how business was done there. And it was a disaster. So we struggled to even get product across the border, let alone find sales channels. And in general, if you kind of looked at a case study of how to put a business case together, you'd probably find a lot of holes in it. But we toiled away for 18 months and then ended up winding things up. And for me personally, kind of out of money, but not ready to give up on China. So eventually I found a job in Shanghai back in consulting, doing customer strategy work for a global ad agency called Iris Worldwide. And they took me on board because marketing was going more data driven, and that combination of kind of Deloitte and Student Card experience all knitted together into something interesting for them. My largest client there was the Intercontinental Hotels Group, which got me into travel and hospitality, which really kind of ignited the passion point for me that I like being in an industry where people spend their savings on. You know, it's something people want to do in their free time. So I had a few really good years there in Shanghai, and then Iris gave me the opportunity to move to the US, where I started an office in Atlanta, where Intercontinental Hotels was headquartered, and helped grow our New York presence as well. So it's kind of rotating between those two cities. Grew the consulting team from a team of me to a team of 10 over the course of a few years, and then decided it was time to come home and start a family. And I figured if you put wheels on a hotel room, you get a camper van. And that's what led me to THL or Tourism Holdings, which is where I've been the last 8 years. And for those of you that don't know THL, we build, rent, and sell camper vans in 5 countries around the world, and we're the world's largest operator of commercial RV rentals. And my time here, I've worn many hats, kind of a smorgasbord of some of that global experience I've talked about. Initially, Chief Commercial Officer, so responsible for revenue and looking after revenue when the pandemic struck. And there's a whole bunch of great stories for another day from those times. But we innovated, we created new revenue streams, and we fought really to get the company balance sheet in good shape. We then merged with our largest competitor, Australia listed Apollo Tourism, and I became Chief Transformation Officer, which was kind of a made-up title to knit the two businesses together. And then late last year, I became Chief Financial Officer, so leading finance as well as a number of our group support functions. So that's my career in a nutshell. Marketing to strategy to finance, consulting to startup to listed company executive, and that global lens of New Zealand, Australia, China, and North America, all at different times. And when I kind of step back and reflect on that, I think you struggle to recognize a grand design in that career arc. It's very much been about investing in the journey. And I've always had that motto I kind of spoke about earlier about putting myself in interesting places with interesting people and doing interesting work and having trust that things will, if you put yourself in the right environment, things will eventuate from there. So that's a bit of a preamble. What I'm going to do now, if it works, is beam up a couple of slides, very rudimentary, not gone through graphic design slides, about 5 butterfly effect moments that have happened to me through my career that have helped move me from one opportunity to the next opportunity. And the key thing really is that none of those things are things you can plan for. And sometimes the most innocuous moments can lead to some of the biggest turning points in your life. So I am going to make an attempt to share screen here and see how it goes. Put myself in the corner and share. And hopefully that's appearing. Here are my 5 butterfly effect moments. The first one I call the poem. So when I was at the University of Auckland, Student Card were running a competition to put in something creative with the prize of a fully catered day at their end of year concert in the university quad. And I wrote a poem called An Ode to Student Card. And I actually tracked it down in my Gmail not long ago, which was an interesting read. But that poem basically won me this competition, and a bunch of the student card suppliers, Burger King, Export Gold, etc., were there. And I spent the day basically talking their heads off about wild brand ideas. And I'm not sure if any of those ideas were particularly good, but they enjoyed my enthusiasm. And 3 days later, that was a Friday, 3 days later, I got a call from Student Card offering me a job. And that was in my second year of university. And over the next 3 years, I effectively worked full time, doing everything from sales to writing HTML websites to negotiating loyalty deals, and just had this awesome experience as a student. And I genuinely don't think Deloitte would have hired me if I hadn't have had that experience while I was there at university. So really the big lesson for me from the poem is to enter the competition. You know, it can be uncomfortable to put yourself out there, but the smallest little things, however innocuous, can open up a conversation with someone new that can lead to the next big thing. The next one is the Nongataha House. So Nongataha is a town just out of Rotorua. And at Deloitte, I was put on a project with Carl Holt Harvey in Tokoroa for a year. And I was the most junior person in the project. I was the only Kiwi in a global team of kind of hotshot supply chain consultants from America, Canada, the UK, the Netherlands, that had been flown in by Rank Group to basically do some work with Carl Holt Harvey. And I was the one Kiwi put on the team, probably there to navigate them, finding the best pies to buy and what to do in the weekends. But for me, it was such a cool opportunity to be with this group of really interesting people. And I made the decision to go all in. So rather than staying in a hotel room for Monday through Thursday and returning home to Auckland to my flat each weekend, you know, only a couple of hours drive, I decided to rent a house with 3 of the people in this project team. And they're all about 3 or 4 years more experienced than me, and they've become really good mates. But most importantly, is that they invested in my skills. And each night, we were working pretty long hours, but each night you'd see the 4 of us kind of on the couches in this house with our laptops out. And one guy in particular, an engineer from Montreal, took a real interest in me becoming an Excel modeler. And by the end of the year, I'd gone from a marketer to a VBA coder doing kind of complex working capital work and planning distribution networks, and ended up developing a model so big that Carter Holt Harvey had to buy a specialist computer and run the calculations overnight. So not the most elegant model, but something that did really good things for them. And that team ended up getting picked up by Rank Group and taken across to Chicago and across America doing a bunch of projects with them. So I kind of rode the wave of this global team for a period of time that taught me a whole bunch of really fundamental skills. which for me, the lesson is be around interesting people and try not to be the smartest person in the room. And for me, the experience of having made the call to live in the house with those guys and had effectively those tutorials every night has just been so important for the rest of my career. So opportunities to surround yourself by smart people and go kind of completely into sponge mode. The third is the big fail, which I kind of alluded to with our China business. So it was a really challenging time. I put all my savings into this business. I'd given up my income. And by the end of the 18 months, I was basically couch surfing in Beijing and living off a meal a day. But it was a time of my life, kind of mid to late 20s, where I didn't have dependents. And the risk really was my lifestyle of the day as opposed to anything more fundamental. And I feel like I learned a hell of a lot. I got very much humbled. And really importantly, it got me into China. And I look back on those hard times as really formative and at a stage in my life when I could handle some of the downside of what was going on. And that kind of takes me back to that internal motto. So interesting people in interesting places, and definitely putting myself into China, despite failing big within China, unlocked the next set of things. Now, I'd basically moonwalked out of New Zealand to go and make my millions in China and wasn't really ready to come back with my tail between my legs. So I decided to stay in China and find work. And over the course of a couple of months, it would have taken me hundreds of job applications before someone even responded to me. And the bank balance is looking pretty sad at this point. But luckily, China is very transient. And a friend was leaving the city and asked if I wanted to pick up their clients teaching English. And teaching English for a few months really afforded me the income to survive in order to find a job that would take me in a job that I liked. And I wanted to pull up a little photo here. So this guy here was my main student. He was the manager of an upscale mall in Beijing that had just been built and wanted to get 3 or 4 English lessons a week. And for kind of 3 months or so, I taught him. And when I finally got my job in Shanghai, I bought some tickets to an NBA game and took him along because he had done such a service by basically keeping me afloat. So he doesn't know how much of a difference he made to me, but this is my little thank you. I've not kept in touch with him, unfortunately, but he's probably wandering around Beijing with a bad New Zealand accent, but absolute legend. And then the final thing here is sending a LinkedIn direct message. So when I'd gone from China, had my time in the US, and was coming back to New Zealand with a really strong preference to stay in travel and hospitality. And New Zealand's a small job market. I tapped into all of my networks, speaking with executives, board members, basically anyone that I could get in front of, and just couldn't find any job prospects. And I ended up reading about Tourism Holdings and thought it was a pretty interesting company, but didn't know anyone there. So I bought a LinkedIn premium account and I messaged the CEO with a bit of a sorry for the random note, but here's who I am. Can we have a chat sort of message? And fortunately, our CEO, Grant, is the type of person that responds to these things. And they just so happen to have a job running their marketing team that they hadn't advertised for yet. So they interviewed me entirely remotely, which was pretty novel in 2017, and hired me sight unseen. And really the lesson for me from this is if you don't ask, you don't get. And that split-second decision to put myself out there and get a LinkedIn premium account and send a message directly has paved the way for the last 8 years of my career. And incidentally, in the 8 years since I did that, I've only had one person do the same to me. So I probably get 10 business development messages a day, really, from different SaaS providers. But in terms of people that are really passionate about the industry and want to have a chat, it just doesn't happen that much. And that one person that has reached out, we haven't found the right role, but I'm determined to find it for them because they're a really amazing person. So hot tip, if you're passionate about a company or job, take a swing, send a message. You might not get a response, or you might find the door open that will change your life. So these are just a few little examples of the write in action. If I didn't write a poem, I wouldn't have got a job at Student Card. Without that job, I wouldn't have got a job at Deloitte. Without living in the Nongataha house, I would never have learned the core skills that drive my career today. That took me to Chicago, which gave me a case of the travel bug that got me into China, where I failed, got back on my feet, and got a job in Shanghai that has triggered an amazing career in the tourism industry. So back to some of those initial mindset things I talked about, curiosity, optimism, and ambition, putting yourself in interesting places with interesting people and doing interesting work. And really, that's, I think, a really achievable everyday mindset of kind of being present in the moment and trusting that the rest will sort itself out. Which takes me to just some final words before I stop and take questions. So it takes me to where basically I am today. So CFO as a listed company, father of 3 kids under 6, and an improv comedian at the Covert Theatre in Ponsonby. So I loved Whose Lines Are It Anyway growing up, and randomly went to an improv show one night, kind of 3 years ago, and they were advertising courses for improv comedy. And coming out of the second lockdown and being no longer able to travel with kids and feeling a little isolated from the world, I took the plunge and signed up and thought, hey, these courses could be a bit of fun. One thing's led to another, and I'm now on stage to paying audiences a few times a month. And for me, it's an art form that speaks to a lot of what I preach here. It's about learning a new thing, always kind of being in that growth mindset, being okay with imperfection, and actually finding that people warm up more to the mistakes you make than to a really polished product. Practicing connection, because you're only as funny as your engagement with the person on stage next to you, and just being around interesting people who are different to you and provide perspective. And those things have really brought a lot of joy and a lot of balance to my career. And in fact, I've since learned that there's a theory behind this. There's a New Zealand-based leadership researcher called Nick Petrie, and he termed it opposite worlds. And an opposite world is an activity or a hobby that puts you in a state that's directly opposite of what your work environment is. Now, it might be cooking, it might be playing music in a heavy metal band, it might be DIY in your house, it might be becoming an expert landscaper. It can be anything that puts you into a growth journey where you have those mini failures. You're a little bit exposed, but you're learning. And for me, that was improv comedy. And Nick found that leaders who engage in an opposite world are more fulfilled and they're less prone to burnout. And he did a big study across the US and actually found that as the #1 differentiator for those that burnt out and those that didn't. So the busier I get, the tighter I hold onto my opposite world. And here is a photo of my opposite worlds in action. So these two things happened in the same week. The top is an Institute of Finance award ceremony where we won Treasury Function of the Year. And the bottom is an improv comedy performance where I pretended to be a cat. And really the balance of those two things is what keeps me going day to day. So that's a little glimpse about me, and I will pass back to Shand for questions.
That was so insightful, Ollie. I've got a whole page of questions myself, but I want to encourage everybody. I see a couple of questions in the question box. Please add a few more, and we can start asking Ollie to answer them. What I really took from what you were talking about, Ollie, was one common theme in all those 5 moments was being uncomfortable. Essentially, you decided to be uncomfortable with writing those cards, sharing a house with all those people. And then it's never comfortable to accept failure when you don't do well. Going to China was being uncomfortable in another culture. And then also reaching out to someone on LinkedIn out of the blue. It can make people uncomfortable. But what you're saying is opportunities really come out of being in that uncomfortable place. Do you have any more to add on that, or have I summarized that?
Oh, you summarized it really well. I think it's actually becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's almost like that combination of the optimism and curiosity. You forget a little bit to be uncomfortable. And I think what I've learned over time is that people, I mentioned it a bit earlier with improv, which I think is a good analogy to life, is that it's human to make mistakes and it's human to put yourself out there, and people generally respect you for giving something a go. They don't laugh at you for failing. And I think if you become comfortable with that, then taking those little risks becomes more natural.
I mean, how do you overcome the fear of being uncomfortable personally? Because sometimes you come up with the idea and go, okay, it's a really good idea to reach out to this person on LinkedIn, but self-doubt creeps in. How do you
Yeah.
manage?
I don't think you ever I don't think you ever get over it. Like there's always, even if you're just standing in a public park and wondering if you should spark up a conversation with someone or if they'll think you're weird, like you never get over the experience of, uh, am I going to be judged for doing this thing? But I think the more repetitions you do of it, the more you realize that most people don't judge. And if it is the type of person that does judge you for it, then it's probably not the type of person to spend a lot of time with going forward anyway. So um, it's always uncomfortable. And I think just having the belief that if you take the step, that the worst thing that will happen is that that relationship didn't butt into anything or that idea didn't butt into anything. But the more repetitions you're doing, the more you find those gems out there. That's the thing. I think it's really just belief that it will work out.
Awesome. Um, you was talking about approaching things with optimism, and I was thinking, how did you manage to approach COVID with optimism? Because in your industry, everything is very planned, and
Mm.
and suddenly the world has become an uncertain place. How did you manage that?
Yeah, really focusing on what you can control and what you can't. And I talked about my CEO a bit earlier who responded to me on LinkedIn, which I think if you find someone that responds to you on LinkedIn, it's probably a good sign as well. We were onto the pandemic pretty early, and clearly it's really tough on tourism. And he told us all, got us all into a room kind of late February, I think it was 2020, and said, hey, there's going to be different opinions on how bad this virus is or isn't about the approaches our politicians take. None of that stuff matters to us. Our job is to maximize the available opportunity. And with that, we kind of all got our heads together and said, we've got a common purpose here, which is around the company. And we were kind of liberated in a way because all of our traditional revenue streams fell away when international flights fell away. So we ended up, there might be a few people here that enjoyed the experience, but we did a $29 a day camper van campaign that we released the day that lockdowns finished. And we made 4 months of bookings within 3 days. We collapsed every system under the weight of demand. It was just a culturally timed moment. We did a lot of non-tourism stuff with setting up quarantine sites and mobile vaccination and disaster relief, kind of repurposing our tourism vehicles to other purposes. So, did that make us as successful a company as international tourism? No, but was it enough to keep things ticking along? Yes. And if you can create that purpose and that energy with a group of people, it can actually be a really stimulating time. And I kind of my dirty little secret it was quite an enjoyable time in a weird way.
I take it it's like almost improvisation, but on the go.
Yeah, there's a there's a little bit of that. I found improv comedy later. I think the pandemic was less comedic, but it's the same skills of just being prepared for things that aren't going your way, and not getting hung up on the problem, but just working out how you can move forward and create some energy out of it.
Okay, let's look at some of the questions that we've got coming in, and I'm going to go with the one that's got the most upvotes at the moment. It says, "Thanks, Ollie. Great presentation and a unique way of talking about taking opportunities. Can you share about why you are based in New Zealand when you could probably live anywhere and work anywhere in the world? Why New Zealand?"
So I'm really patriotic about New Zealand. Like I really love New Zealand and really passionate about our place in the world, what we offer, the way we carry ourselves as people. I think we see New Zealanders at their best overseas, and just how we can assimilate with other cultures and everything. So look, I had such a wonderful time in China and the US, and I'd like to think at some point I'll be abroad and do things abroad again, but. There's no better country in the world to raise a family, I think, than New Zealand. So that was a big driver of coming back. And I happen to work for a company that's in 5 countries around the world, and I can kind of still scratch that itch a little bit. So I find ways to get that global experience here, and for now, it's home, and I love it.
Amazing. Next one. Thanks, Ollie. Did you have anyone to help guide you in your big life-changing decisions, or did you just always trust your own judgment?
Uh, Trust my own judgment, but also trust the people that you're around at the time. So again, that notion of interesting places and interesting people. I don't think I've got like a single career mentor, but I can probably think of hundreds of people that through the guy from Montreal with his deep mentoring is probably that's a year campaign to turn me into something. But then equally, I've had just conversations with people where someone said something really insightful at the right time. So I think I take a lot of inspiration from what I'm surrounded by, and that improves your judgment. If you're out there talking to people and seeing different things, I think you've just got a better intuition for things rather than spending all that time in your own head.
Okay. Someone's asked, I like how you've worked in lots of different places around the world. Do you think that is necessary in today's job market, getting international experience? Is that important?
No, no. I think being curious about the world is important. I think being well read and understood about what's going on and having a point of view on things is important. And when I say having a point of view, it's not a point of view of what's right or wrong. It's a point of view that's more inherently personal, but it's understanding that someone else's point of view is not necessarily wrong because it's opposing it, and having the ability to listen to it and to understand where people are coming from. That kind of that empathy, I think, is really important. So um, it's advantageous to get abroad because you see things, you're immersed in something different as opposed to touching in on something different. But not everyone has the opportunity to do that, and I think there's plenty of ways to find inspiration within New Zealand as well. In saying that, if you do have an opportunity, take a swing at it. It's just finding where the opportunities are within New Zealand or elsewhere.
I think it goes back to what you were saying in your talk about having a global lens. It's how
Yes.
you develop that global lens. You don't necessarily have to travel, but it is advantageous to travel and work elsewhere. But I guess you just by keeping in abreast of what's happening globally, that's how you develop it and having an opinion around those
We're a
matters.
really small country. We're really dependent on the rest of the world. It's probably a big observation I took from living in the US and China is that they're both domestic economies. So they don't have to be interested in anything else because there's so much activity happening within your city or state. Beijing's approaching 40 million people. So there's so much stuff happening locally that you can be a local person. Whereas I think New Zealand, we don't have that luxury. So some intrigue about the world's really important.
We can't talk like Trump about tariffs.
No,
Yeah.
no. I think if we tried to impose tariffs on the world, it wouldn't go so well.
Right. Okay, let's take the next one. What was your no to yes ratio, as in how many rejections before you get accepted in general, and how do you stay motivated to find that yes, this is from Rebecca Griffith?
No, so I assume that's asking about the job applications. Um, Oh, it was high in China and it was high coming back to New Zealand. I mean, different reasons. I think in China, just not being a native Chinese speaker and not having a particularly long CV before being there, it's just nothing really to make me stand out. So I had that, and then New Zealand's just a smaller job market, and I was probably more senior and more employable in nature, but that in a way limits your prospects as well. So you get a bunch of no's, but every no is interesting in and of itself as well because you learn something about the market, you learn something about yourself, you actually hone your idea of what you want and what you don't want. So casting a wide net out, having lots of conversations, and not necessarily jumping at the first opportunity, I think can be really powerful as well. So large no to yes ratio, but the no's are part of the journey.
Here's one that's been upvoted quite a bit. 8 people want you to answer this. So, what advice would you give to someone on a fairly stable and safe work situation, but feeling unfulfilled? I've been work from home for 5 years since that fateful day we all locked down in March 2020 and felt grateful to still have a job. But it just feels like I'm working on autopilot at this point, and it isn't my passion. The idea of going back to study to pursue what I really want to do, become a psychologist, and forfeit my income for a while, that sense of safety, stability feels terrifying, and I keep delaying it. Should I just feel the fear and do it anyway?
Yes. Um, Look, I can't talk to your specific situation, but I think look, there's a couple of kind of intertwined lessons. I think giving up your income's hard. And I know if I went back and did my startup in Beijing again, I'd probably protect my income a little more and try and find a way to do the business whilst not completely forfeiting my income. Because what happens when you forfeit your income is you reduce your runway, and sometimes you don't have enough runway to get to the outcome that you're looking for. In saying that, you have to take risks. So if you're feeling really unsatisfied in what you're doing, that's actually I think often an unhealthier place than being short on money. So if you can find a way to kind of make ends meet, and you can model out a couple of years to do your study and go, look, it's not going to be a glamorous lifestyle, but I can make it work. Then take the plunge and do it, and know that you can always go back to your old job. You got 5 years of experience. You're good at that thing. So that thing will never go away. That will never leave you. You can just add more strings to your bow. The other thing's the opposite worlds idea. So, which might be a step in that direction. If you can find an opposite world to invest your time in while you're still doing your job, then you'll find that will unlock a whole bunch of inspiration. And if you're feeling like you're in a bit of a rut, then it's a nice way of, not taking the big risk, but actually just becoming creative again. I think when we're stuck in a rut, we become very process driven. We become very mechanical, and finding ways to unleash your creativity can make you more comfortable with taking the risk.
I mean, I have only one thing to say to that. You only have one life, and you owe it to yourself to follow exactly what makes you happy and fulfilled. I just gave up a high-paying job to come back into the business. I left our business after COVID because it was burning me out. And I went and got a job as an operations manager. Great pay, but it was really not what I wanted to do in the end. And I've gone to becoming a coach, and I'm still studying. I've finished my psychology degree, already have that qualification, but I just like having qualifications to prove a point. So I'm doing a coaching qualification while practicing being a coach. As long as you can find some income to keep you going, do it. You only have
Yeah.
one life.
Awesome. Good on you. Your health is your wealth, right? Just you gotta look after it first and foremost.
And wealth will triple and come back if you're following actually what you're passionate about. If you're just doing a job for the sake of doing it, you're not going to grow in that role or in that business because you're just ticking boxes. It's not something you're passionate about. Okay, few more. I'm early on in my career, so I'm likely to already be the least smartest in the room. Do you have any tips for finding those smarter, more interesting people to learn from?
You make your own luck. So by putting yourself out there and meeting different people and finding ways to make yourself useful, then you inevitably end up with interesting people. So whether it's getting out on networking things, whether it's doing the LinkedIn message, if you've got an industry or something you're really passionate about, track down someone in there and just ask if you can have a cup of coffee. And then if the coffee goes well, ask if you can do a bit of work or a project for them, or if you can pick them up as a mentor, or whatever it might be. I think just the more environments you put yourself into, the higher the chance that you come across your people, and that you can learn a lot from them. No silver bullet, it's just getting out there.
Yeah, I agree. Networking can feel scary, but it's really important to be uncomfortable and go ask questions of people that you look up to. There was a while in my life where I was contemplating leaving hospitality, and I met the careers advisor at the university, and I was doing a panel for the university. And I said, "Oh, you may not want me next year because I don't want to do hospitality anymore." And she said, "Of course we'd want you." And she said, "What you're doing is applying." I was applying for jobs on Seek, and everyone was laughing because I have 3 or 4 businesses. But I was really passionate about looking for a role. And she said, "You need to date CEOs of LinkedIn. Go for coffee dates." So that's what I reframed it as in my head. Coffee dates with CEOs. And that's how I landed a job at the Breast Cancer Foundation for a while. It was great, and I've made friends for life, and I have a friend in the CEO of Breast Cancer Foundation, and it's so fulfilling to just be out there, make yourself uncomfortable, and go have coffees with CEOs if you need to. You'll find your tribe.
100%.
Another one. How did you go throughout it when you feel burnt out? Anything that you find helpful for you?
I think avoidance of burnout is better than cure of burnout. So cure of burnout's really hard. I think once you're in that position. So the further back to the opposite worlds thing, I'm really, really passionate about the concept of opposite worlds. I think we're at our happiest when we're growing, when we're learning, when we're picking up something new and we have a bit of struggle. If everything's too easy or too monotonous, then things start becoming hard. So I see a lot of people that are very busy and have very long hours that are very fulfilled because they keep themselves interested. And then I see people that don't have as long hours that feel burnt out because they feel like they're in a rut. So the opposite world thing, I think, find what's important for you or what's interesting for you and something that is different to that primary world is a big part of it. And then it's probably back to that question that got the 8 votes earlier around recognizing when you're in a position that's really unfulfilling and changing something up. If you don't change your situation, then the outcomes don't tend to change either. So there is a point with burnout where you just might be in the wrong environment and need to change up for yourself.
Toxic workplaces are a prime example. If you're not fitting in and you're feeling left out, it's not going to change. You're going to have to leave the workplace or find something different. I also think we all need like a self-care prescription, and that's not going to the GP. That's not self-care. It's finding the joy that you talk about, Ollie, like you found in improv, the opposite thing. Finding something that's got nothing to do with your work, that is an outlet for you. And as you say, I've been burnt out twice. Now my biggest thing is to avoid burnout at all stages because you don't want to be there. It's like you don't want to be sick. It's the same thing. Mentally, physically, you don't want to get there. So give yourself a self-care prescription is what I say. Find that one thing in the week that brings you joy and is an outlet. And we'll take the last one. Have you ever had a moment of, I just want to give up because it's been a closed door after closed door? How did you manage that? If you've ever had that moment, what freed you from that?
Yes. So I think that it would be inhuman not to have those moments. Sleep is really good. So at a micro level, having a night's sleep is often really good. So, I will habitually, if I'm at a dead end, look to get a night's sleep and reapproach the thing in the morning. At a more macro level, so after my China startup experience, and prior to joining my job, actually prior to applying for jobs in Shanghai, I went off to Thailand for 4 weeks and did Muay Thai kickboxing for 4 weeks just to get, I'd lost weight and wasn't eating well and all sorts, and put myself into an environment, another opposite world of sorts, right? To get fit and just again kind of get out of that process mechanical mindset, and get a little bit more inspired about things before approaching the challenge. So some kind of circuit breaker. So rather than giving up, when you think about giving up, find a way to push pause, find a circuit breaker of some sort, and reapproach the challenge. And sometimes that circuit breaker tells you that the thing that you're trying to do wasn't right anyway. So if you give up for good reasons, it's a good thing. But you want to be making sure that you're clear of head when you're doing it.
That's great advice. Thanks, everyone. That's where we're going to wrap up. Thank you for your questions, your attention, and your participation. And thank you, Ollie, for such an interesting talk. I've learned so much myself. So I'm sure everyone else attending has had some great insights.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.